everyone, welcome back to the Canary Room. Thought I'd do a special little episode for this weekend. I have spent the last couple of days sorting through this season's show team and singling all the birds off, cleaning the cages, giving them a little bath. So I thought, why not share it with you? So it's been a while since our last episode on the channel. A visit to Ollie at OC Avery, and thanks for all the feedback on that. Hopefully you'll enjoy today's episode as well. So you know what to do, unless you've forgotten it's been that long. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back, and as always, enjoy the show. So we've had a reasonably good season, breeding season in the Canary Room. We managed to get a couple of Norwich to the sticks. I won't be showing them again this year. Just not got the volume of birds. Quality-wise, really happy with them. So a special shout to Keith and to Mike for providing me with the birds. I've bred a couple of nice birds out there, so they'll, keep building for seasons ahead. Red pole-wise, been another good season. I think a dozen or so young. I think with the weather, they went early and then they stopped and then they went again. So that was good. But of course, the main thing in here is the Fifes. Always has been the Fifes, and had a good season. What I've done is throughout the sort of the molt time. Now the birds haven't finished the molt yet by any stretch of the imagination, but throughout the molt time, I housed all of the birds in pairs in the cages, and the pairs were either nestmates. Tried to avoid putting two cockbirds together where I could. So when it comes to preparing for the show season, though, actually having the birds in pairs can be challenging, and the reason for that is that they can fight, they can pluck, and that will ruin a show bird. So the first thing in our sort of preparation for the show season is to single all of the birds off. Now, what I've been doing over the last 6 weeks or so is taking birds, having a look at them in show cages, looking at them in the stock cages while they're relaxed, and basically working out what I think which birds are going to be of show quality, and which birds from that show team then may I then select for next year's breeding. So it's a whittling down process. Now, I will say, as I film this second week in September, that there haven't been any canaries that have left the shed yet, and there won't be until probably late October. And the reason for that is, particularly with the clearer birds, they can be very late developers. So I've got a dozen lightly variegated clear birds which I've put in pairs at the moment, which are potential to move on. But I will keep looking at those birds, because there's one that's catching my eye already, which as they take a shape, they may end up moving into these cages here. So don't be quick. I know people are very quick to get rid of birds. Now, ultimately, you want the bird through the molt. So birds have been in pairs. They're now in single cages. It took me 2 days to do, and I hate cleaning cages with a passion. But it took me 2 days to do. These cages from Dave Rand's, I think I've had them 4 or 5 years now. They're as good as new. Wipe down, super easy. Perches cleaned, and drinkers cleaned, seed hoppers cleaned, everything cleaned. Because the molt, there's a lot of feather dust, there's a lot of dust, there's a lot of birds in the room at the moment, and as a consequence of that, things get dirty quickly. So you can probably hear the birds are singing sort of quite lustfully at the moment. Now, many bird keepers, and I include myself in this as well, have what we like to call bird OCD, which is we like the drinkers on one side, we like the seed hoppers on another, so that the seed hoppers don't get drinking water in. we like to keep different colours of birds in similar things. So on this wall here, just to the side of the camera, I've got 10 light yellow birds and 8 light buff birds. Now, I could have done 9 of 9, and that would have been the balance, but the quality of the yellow birds that I've selected and the one buff bird that may have made it, the quality of the yellow bird was better than the quality of the buff bird. So rather than saying, okay, I'll have 9 and 9, I have gone for 10 and 8. So there are 18 clear birds here, clear, lightly variegated and variegated birds on this wall. So I've got what I think, and I say think, I've got what I think, 2 clear yellow cocks, a ticked yellow cock, 3 clear yellow hens, 3 variegated yellow hens, and a clear, what I think is a yellow hen. And then behind me, tick buff cock here, 2 clear buff cocks, clear buff hen, and I think that's a clear buff hen, tick buff hen, and then I've got a couple of variegated buff hens. And then on the row below, I've got 3 bluebirds, I think a hen and 2 cocks, and then 3 variegated white birds, and I think there's a cock and 2 hens, but hens will warble at this time of year. So first thing to do is to single the birds off. Now, before I put them in their new freshly clean cages, what I did is I gave all the tails a little wash. I gave them all a little bath, and you can see from the shot here that, you know, the birds they were properly soaked. So they went into the cages properly soaked. Now, the birds are all at different stages of the molt. I'll show you in a second 2 birds, a ticked yellow cock, and beneath it is a clear yellow hen. And those 2 birds are the clear yellow cock. You can see he's still got pins around his face. You can see the clear yellow hen still got a lot of feather to come on the top of the head. So first show is probably about 5 or 6 weeks away, so hopefully they will have finished by then. So really, it's about a nice clean environment. It's about keeping them now on their own as we start the process of show training. I talked about the organisation and the perhaps the OCD of bird keeping. So on the wall here, I have my dark birds and my fawn birds. Now, there are 12 dark birds that I've singled off at the moment. They are at various different stages. There are 3 dark yellow hens, there are 3 dark buff cocks, there are 2 dark yellow cocks, and there are 4 dark buff hens. And there's 1 or 2 of these that have really, really caught my eye, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they produce and how they perform, I should say, on the show bench this year. So again, exactly the same process. These birds were washed, they were put in the cages, they've got fresh breading, they've got fresh water daily, fresh seed. They will now live in these cages for the rest of the show season. Now, what I will do is I will put the Fife show cage, and we'll have a look at a couple of birds in show cages in a minute, but the Fife show cage has an external drinker. So the bird needs to bob its head and put its head in to drink. Now, in the Canary Room, I use tubular drinkers on the cages. Now, what I will do over the course of the next week or so is, in addition to the tubular drinker, I will also fit here top hat drinkers, big top hat drinkers. And what I'll do, and I do exactly the same in the training cages, is I'll put a little bit of broccoli in to start with, maybe a little sprinkling of conditioned seed on top, just to get the birds used to putting their heads through. Now, running birds into cages is fine. Keeping them on some staging, and I'll turn the camera around in a minute and you can see the staging I've got in the Canary Room. I've only got 2 show cages on it at the moment. Again, is fine, but what you need to make sure you're doing when you're preparing for the show season is you need to handle the cages, and you need to handle the cages with the birds in. You need to move them around. So the canary room isn't very big, but I will walk round with birds in cages. Now, to start with, some of those birds will flap and they'll flutter and they'll be unsteady, and that's to be expected. This is part of the show training now, which is a gradual process. Now, first show probably be mid-October time, and I'll use that largely as a training show as well. So although obviously I'll compete to try and win, but the important thing in there is to use it as a training show and to just give the birds that little bit of practice in the show cage. So throughout the segment today, throughout the show today, we've seen a number of the different birds in the cages. Let's put a couple up on the stage in now and take a closer look at them. So first up, we've got the two birds that we saw in the stock cages. So on the left-hand side, we've got a ticked yellow cock. Now, it's quite a bold bird, this. It's got a really good head on it. Do with it standing a little bit more. It will get up, but I could do with just showing perhaps a touch more leg on it. On the right-hand side, we can see a clear yellow hen. Now, this bird stands well. You can see she's not finished yet. There's still back feather to come. But two nice birds, and, you know, we did well. Gerald and I, our Spencer and Elle partnership, did well last year on the show bench with the clears. We won the clear special a couple of times. We won the 10% special as well. And whilst I'm not suggesting for a second that these birds, you know, because I haven't seen what everybody else has got, but I'd like to think these birds will do and hold their own, assuming that they finish off as I anticipate and as I expect them to. The hen at the moment is showing a little bit too much wings, so she's been bathed this morning, and I think the feather on her is that she's probably still a little bit wet. So there's two birds to look at. There's a couple of our clear birds or light birds. We'll have a look at a couple of buffs now, clear buffs, and then we'll have a look at some darks. Now, we've got a couple of buff birds now here, light buff birds. The bird sort of standing proud is a 10% buff cock. He's showing himself quite nicely at the moment, actually. In fact, if he shows himself like that on the show bench, I'll be very, very happy. He's still got a way to go. He's still got some head to come through. The bird on the right-hand side is a clear buff hen who's just starting to show herself now. You can see with the bird on the right-hand side that the back feather is still got to come. So you can see it's just sort of breaking, so there's a little bit of fluff around the rump. This bird actually went into a soft molt, so it's still got feather to come through, but position-wise on the buff cock that you can see there, I think that's the kind of position I want on my birds. At the moment, the buff hen, perhaps a little stressed. Literally, I've just caught them up and put them on the show bench. I haven't waited for them to settle. When it comes to the evaluation of your birds, you know, if you were looking at these two birds, the bird on the left is the one that you'd want in your show team because it's in a cage, it's settled immediately, and it's starting to show itself. The bird on the right is a little bit anxious, so it's moving around, it's not as settled. Let's see, we'll keep an eye out on that cockbird and see how he does on the show bench across the show season here in the UK. Now up on the staging, we've got two green yellow hens. The bird on the left is a self-green yellow hen. The bird on the right is a heavily variegated yellow hen. So I like both of these birds. The bird on the left, which is just eating now, has got a way to go. So head feathers still got a way to go through. The bird on the right, if it was to be critical, and you have to be, I'd want her wings perhaps not to be quite as proud as they are at the moment. If I just try and not move into shot, see if I can get the green yellow hen to move a little bit, because I think the green yellow hen shows plenty of leg on it, as does the heavily variegated. Two nice small typey birds. Now they've got plenty of width across the shoulders, which is what I'm looking for. The eagle-eyed amongst you may spot a crease. Both birds have a small crease. It's more pronounced on the heavily variegated. I'm not concerned about that at this stage. I think that, you know, if it was there in the show season, I'd perhaps be a little bit more worried. But that is, at this stage of the year, can just be an indication that there's still chest feathers to come through. So nothing too much to worry about there. Let's see how these two get on the bench for us. And the final two birds we're going to take a look at are two of my heavily variegated buff birds that have been bred this year. So the bird on the left, as you look at it, is a heavily variegated buff cock. I like this bird. I like my buff cock birds to have the style of yellow hens. I think he's got a really strong top end on him. He's got a lovely break in the neck. Position-wise, maybe up a little touch. He could do with being up a little touch. But as I say, you know, these are things that position's massively important in the Fife. At this stage, you can see him there, he's up, so we know he can get up. But that's the kind of position, that's the kind of style that I like on my buff cock birds, almost like a yellow hen. The bird on the right-hand side is, I think, one of the best buff hens I've ever bred. The feather quality on this bird is exceptional. Of course, as I say that, she has a little fit and she doesn't show herself properly. In this look, she's dropping a wing now, she looks god-awful. You're probably thinking to yourself, what on earth is this man talking about? And this is part of the challenge with canaries and show canaries, you know, right here. I look at this bird in its stock cage, I look at it in a show cage. It's a bird I've had out more than any other bird probably in the room. What I'd like it to do, and you can see as I start to move it, it gets up. I'd like it to show a little bit more leg. You can see it's a little bit nervous, but its wing carriage is absolutely exceptional. Tiny, tiny wings. I see an awful lot of Fifes with really long flight feathers. So as the bird's been brought down in size, the flight feather hasn't come down at the same sort of thing. But I like this buff hen. I will hopefully get her on the show bench, but certainly she'll be a bird I retain. So that's a quick look at some of the birds close up. So we haven't even been to across the Pennines yet to Gerald's. I have, but I didn't take the camera with me, and I know Gerald's got some absolutely outstanding birds that he's bred this year. So really, when it comes to preparing for the show season, key tips, you know, get the birds singled off as soon as you can. Now, often room doesn't permit that. I'm really lucky in the Canary Room in that I've got banks of flight cages, 8-foot flight cages on the wall here. The adult birds that I've done a sort of first sift of, they're all in there. So they've got fresh baths every day, fresh seed every day, obviously fresh water every day. They've got greens, so they can just molt out, and they have done over the summer. 34 birds, I think I said at the top of the show. 34 birds sort of singled off as show potential. That doesn't mean that every single bird that I've singled off at this stage will make it to the show bench. Only the very best of the birds that I've got here will make it to the show bench. It also doesn't mean that every bird I've got will go to every show that I go, and that's one of the key things about a show team. Think about it as a team. Now, being in partnership, I'm very, very lucky. You know, between Gerald and I, we've probably bred over 200 birds, 250 birds maybe this year. So there's an awful lot of birds to select the show team from. Now, that, you know, obviously gives a numerical advantage. For many people, they don't have those numbers of birds to pick from. But let me tell you, you don't need them. You don't need them. You don't need to put huge show teams there. The luxury of having the volume of birds that we've got is that it means that, you know, we can be incredibly picky of what birds that we put on the show bench, and you can do exactly the same. You know, yes, put your birds out, yes, get them judged, but be honest with yourself. You've seen me talk through some of the birds here today, and you know, I'm always looking, as a panel judge, I'm always looking for the fault in the bird. The perfect bird does not exist. In my 15 years of judging canaries, I've never seen the perfect bird. I've seen some that have come very close, but I've never seen the perfect one. So get your birds ready. Give them the best chance. The breeding season's bloody hard work. You know, I was in here 5-6 times a day during the breeding season. You've put the hard yards in, now enjoy it in the show seasons. So give the birds baths, spray them, let them develop. Don't rush them. Don't rush them to the early shows. The reason that there are so many and they're across different rounds is that some of the birds won't be ready until much later shows. Some of these birds won't get on the show bench till mid-end of November. Now, it means they may only get 2 or 3 shows to go to, but that in itself is not a bad thing, because you can overshow canaries, and the challenge can be, if you overshow them, they can't tell you, but you will suffer the consequences the following breeding season. Look, it's great to be back on your channel. It's great to be back on your screens. I have missed you. I have missed doing the show. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Please feel free to share the content as well, so as many people can get to see this as possible. I have been, as I've said many times, working on several sort of feature-length versions, which will drop probably November time, December time, so hopefully that's something to look forward to as well. We've got a few visits that we will do in the sort of the final quarter of the year, and of course my judging engagements are stacked, so I'll be taking you with me on my travels to far-flung places. So if I don't see you before, if I see you at the show bench, I look forward to it. I will be at Stafford this year. I'm judging the English National at Stafford with Gerald, so I'm very much looking forward to that. So if I don't see you at Stafford, everyone, I will see you on the show bench at some stage over the next 3 months. Until next time, take care.